Hey, boys and girls, weather report for May 21st, 2021, and I have a couple of things I want to talk about first, if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine. Neslick, how's that for service?
Yeah.
You asked for a link and you got it right away.
Right away. So first thing I wanted to mention is that Erica and Dr. Dan had a thing on Carter last night, and that everybody should watch, and it is linked in the description, and it's pretty good. It's funny, and it's fun, and everybody should watch it. It was on Creation Myths channel, and I hate Dr. Dan because of the number of subscribers he has. But other than that, you should go see it. And oh yeah, and I heard this really disturbing thing in the news. Jesus died for your sins, but Jesus is out of people that he died for. Apparently there was a quota, and Jesus no longer, so he can't die for any more people. We're full, and you'll be getting probably a letter in the mail about your subscription to the Jesus Saves plan, explaining whether or not you made the cut. Now, if you're over 40, then Jesus died for your sins. But if you're under 40, there's some concern. If you're under 30, you're definitely going to roast in hell forever, because he's definitely out of people. So now that's some really bad news we got with the 2020 census. So
we can't get some really holy guy to come in and die for everybody.
Well, I guess if he comes back and dies again, we might have some hope. But you people that are under 30 will roast in hell. I just want you to know.
Like a rider on an insurance policy.
I think it was built into the thing, but it may be in the Bible somewhere. Maybe I think it's encoded in Revelations numerically, but it's very hard to find.
Maybe
the number is there, but we ran out of people. We're sorry, folks.
Yeah, there's some tricky numbers in that Bible.
Yep, there are. Anyway, that's all I got. Oh yeah. So we found out why philosophers of biology should know biology before they become philosophers of biology. We just learned that in the last stream. Right?
That's right.
I don't know. Anyway.
It was a long discussion, and lots of information was shared. I got the title of a interesting sounding book that might teach me more about natural selection, so I can know the biology side more competently.
I'm typing. Can you hear me typing? Actually,
I can't.
Well, the good news is I'm over 40, so I'm in the clear. But the problem is I want to sin. That's just in my nature, right? So
yeah,
I'm screwed with that, though, right?
Yeah, and
Angelo and most of the guys.
Yeah, and the way it works is if you give up your option to be saved by Jesus, that doesn't mean that somebody under 30 gets it. So yeah, it doesn't work that way. Okay, there's only so many options given out.
That's like it's kind of like an Indian given, right? Sort of like.
Yeah, you can't
it away, but shit, I can't pass it down.
Yeah, you can't give them down their personal subscription. So, but everybody will be getting a letter in the mail. So don't worry about it until you know for sure. I mean, I know it's going to cause a lot of anxiety, but
yeah. Well, the Christians have a lot of anxiety anyway. So about lots of things, especially like sex, things like that.
Yep. Or sexual thoughts. I understand you can go to hell for those too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't, if nobody sins, then Jesus's death was meaningless.
Yeah, I know. What the hell? Poor
Yeah.
bastard, huh?
You can't borrow these cards. You can't. They have your fucking name and your number on them. Your mark of the beast or whatever the hell number they give you when you're born. So anyway, God, that was absolutely amazed me, and I don't know. What you always want to notice when I interview somebody that I disagree with, that there's a certain point in the conversation where I'm done with them. And you can always sort of feel that point. If I don't,
it's the part where you say, "I'm done."
Well, I did it explicitly today. Oftentimes, like with Nicholas Whitmire, there was a point where I was done, and I just get done fairly quickly, like within 5 or 10 minutes with most of these people. That's interesting.
Okay, check the private chat for a link to NonStampCollector's video on Noah's Ark.
Ooh, I should put that in the description, right?
That's the intention.
Because I am a great host, I think. Okay.
It's been highly recommended, like Immutable put the link in the side chat, but I'd heard other people recommending it on different channels.
I watched an interesting video yesterday about gender and God by some really crazy, batshit crazy people, and Matt Powell was one of them. It's like a full-length movie. Have you heard about this movie?
I have not, and it probably concludes that men are put in charge for a reason by God. So you better get used to it, ladies.
Yeah, have you watched that movie? They did. That's one of the big things they talked about.
I have not watched that movie, but I was a Christian in the fundamentalist circles for over 30 years. I just kind of know how those discussions go.
Yep, and they explain the whole thing about why women have to basically go through their husband, and it has something to do with a rib, and it's really complicated. It's some complicated anatomy that they get into, and they explain the whole thing in that, like, I think it's like a full-length movie, and I was fucking horrified when I watched it.
Is that Matt Powell's new one you're talking about?
Maybe it is. What the hell is it called? I've got it in my history. I can pull it up here. There's a weather report. Okay. Hang on a second. I will get to it.
Is that the one that Rage always does, like previews of them, right? He's done he's done, stuff on the movies. I assume that's the one you mean. I never watched it. Only whatever was previewed by somebody on a channel. That's all I've seen of it.
I was watching it while I was dozing off, and when I woke up, I started making sexist comments. So apparently it got into my subconscious. You probably shouldn't watch it while you're taking a nap, because it will just it'll weasel its way into your fucking brain, and you'll become misogynist. Naturally.
I mean, that's how they, that's what they teach. And you look at, we talk about the young kid Will there, how he behaves, and look at how Gavin behaves, and that's all a part of that. It's
called In His Image, Delighting in God's Plan for Gender and Sexuality, the full movie. 1 hour and 43 minutes of this shit.
Oh, I don't think that's not Matt Powell's, is it? That must sound like
he's in the beginning of it. He actually talks a little bit in the beginning, and then this weird guy comes on. He's a weird, scary looking sort of minister duty.
Yeah.
Duty.
Is that that wouldn't be Anderson, would it?
I don't know who the fuck.
Is it Steve Anderson?
Oh, let me see if I can find him. Here he is.
The real wacko one, right? That Matt Powell went down. His ministry is in Arizona, I believe.
Maybe.
And that's I forget the name of that ministry, but
here he is.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll share the screen. That will be cool. Let me find StreamYard again. Okay.
Yeah, I've never like looked into him, but I've heard him talked about, and I've seen him. You know, people have put him up on their channels and talked about it a little bit. But yeah, I don't think I don't think that's him. I don't think that's Steve Anderson.
What is he? He doesn't. Does he tell you? Let's see. He doesn't tell you who he is. Maybe he does somewhere in the movie. I'm sure he has his. I'm sure he has his Patreon listed and his merch site listed somewhere in the movie.
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
Jesus Christ. Oh man.
But anyway, there he is, blowing smoke up your ass.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. Pretty amazing.
Maybe it could be Steve Anderson. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know who the hell that is. So what is Steve Anderson?
I've just heard I've heard a lot of bad things about him, Steve Anderson.
I definitely want to sign up. I definitely want to get on this guy's mailing list because I have a special folder for these people, and I love the daily mails that they come out with. It's just wonderful. It's uplifting.
Oh, Iron Chariot says, yeah, NIFB. That's the name of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not Steven Anderson that you were showing. I just looked him up, and
yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, I didn't.
Do you know
he's much younger than that.
Yeah, Steven Anderson is much younger, right? But is he's not the head of that NIFB, is he, Steven Anderson, or is he? I'm not sure. Like, is he like I don't know. I just heard a lot of bad things about him. Never checked into him at all, really. But
well, these guys take a softer, gentler approach to the whole thing. They're trying to get everybody into their flock. So, it's kind of a softer, gentler approach than some of those guys take, like Matt Paul.
Yeah. But I know, like I said, I think Matt Powell originally lived in Michigan, right? And he moved to Arizona, and Steve Anderson was kind of like his mentor, I think. And maybe Steve Anderson has his own like ministry or something that's affiliated with that NIFB, or I don't know. I don't know that much about it, but
yeah, my grandpa came over from a really bad situation. I think he came out of Russia, and then he by way of Serbia or some fucking place over there, and the Transylvanian mountains, I think, is where he was for a while. But anyway, he came to the United States and he settled in Bessemer, Michigan. And I always wondered why my grandpa only stayed there for like 1 or 2 years, and then he fled to Minnesota. And the more I hear about Michigan, the more I understand why my grandpa fled.
Yeah, so some really bad ministries there, like, or
it
sounds
just
like it, right? I don't know.
Just oftentimes I hear things about Michigan that I would expect to hear about Louisiana or Mississippi or something like that. I mean,
yeah, I know that seems kind of strange, right? And we're so far north, that seems more of a southern Bible Belt type. Yeah,
yeah, but half the people in Michigan are like the Minnesotans, but they just haven't figured out. You see, we built a wall. So they can't get in anymore from Michigan. So they were like fleeing Michigan and trying to get into Minnesota, but we built a wall. So
yeah.
And they can't figure out how to get over it. So
you should have built a moat, like a really deep moat with maybe alligators or something in it.
No philosophers. No philosophers allowed today, Danny.
Yeah.
Danny came in the back room. No philosophers are allowed. So. Because we're not going to continue that shit show. That was enough shit show for the day. And Danny's trying to come back in again because he's just not getting it.
Yeah.
Danny, you're a philosopher. I put on the fucking in chat.
What do you think about philosophical arguments, right? Philosophical arguments, just because if you can't like necessarily refute them, that doesn't make it necessarily true or make them necessarily correct.
Yeah, that's why I use that all beasts. You can put together a syllogism proving why all beasts have red pants. and it doesn't mean anything. And this argument that Fodor came up with is about the stinkiest, most useless, ineffective, irrelevant piece of crap I have ever read.
Right. Yeah.
That's my.
I don't.
And I've read a
agree with
lot
it.
of papers on it. I read a lot.
I
of papers.
really tried to figure it all out, and I had a little short conversation with Danny. We had that short conversation, and then I tried to do a little check-in and trying to understand it all, and it's been great for me because I certainly
Well, I got to read a lot of papers.
Yeah, and I'm not well studied, so I certainly learned something. So it's been interesting for me. But yeah, I mean, I don't agree with the argument. I mean, would it be a good example of saying, you just don't have all the information to be able to pinpoint because things are so complicated?
Well, it's like they cut out this little tiny piece of the theory, and they presented it in a Frankensteinian way. If you were to create the theory by cutting up a bunch of pieces of the theory and pasting them together into a little Frankenstein monster, that would be what they see natural selection, and they won't allow for anything outside of that. They'll scream, "Oh, it's epistemic. Oh, it's not it's not epistemic or whatever." And they try to weasel out of it with that. So they'll weasel out of it with anything you bring up about biology. Yeah. And the clue is that they will not give up this thump argument, right? Even though we've told them that it's ridiculous and it really offends biologists.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, the same thing. Yeah, that thump thing. It just seems to me is stupid. Like,
it's gotta go.
Yeah, it's just a bad example. I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, the thump is like an emergent property, more or less. Versus that natural selection may not even select for or against. It's kind of like that would be a neutral thing. It's an emergent thing, and if I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong. If let's say if that became an issue, natural selection may select against it, as far as like, maybe you would a natural organism would develop more fatty tissue around the heart to protect it from the noise if it became an issue as far as like a preying against an animal with it. You know what I mean? That it would do that, but it's found it to be completely unnecessary. It's never been an issue, right? In the course of evolution, it hasn't been an issue with any organisms or any animals, so it's never been selected, right?
Yeah, to me, they won't allow that. They won't allow anything else about biology to enter the picture, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by Frankensteinian argument. And that's what I mean by they're not even wrong. I mean, they're, the argument, they put it together so that it makes sense, so that it's, pretty much bulletproof, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any impact. It has no effect. It's a flaccid penis of an argument.
Right. And then the whole business of, intention. I mean, I think a big part of that argument was intention, right? And also how it's, it's not producing the predictable powers that it should. And then also it's not related, like that intention is not related to an actual natural law, right? That's all a part of the argument, correct?
Yeah.
So
it's a far more interesting discussion would be about historical evolution and projective evolution and ecology, and what we're doing with evolution. I mean, there are, and that gets into the extended synthesis, and there's far more interesting discussions to be had. And I think we beat this fucking Fodor thing to death. He has nothing interesting to say about what directions biology should take. So, the only reason we're spending time on it is because it's kind of fun to look at this weird attack and rethink our position, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think so, at least for me. I mean, like I said, I've learned something, and it's kind of interesting. And if you can keep the arguments, reasonable, and keep them as discussions / arguments, and as long as they don't get nasty, and you have good discussions, it's great thing to talk about, really, right?
Well, yeah, I'm really, really disappointed in Jack Anstrike. I thought he just brought just nothing but garbage to the argument. I mean, he was offensive.
Yeah, he gets offensive when you can't refute it philosophically. Like, he just sticks to philosophical arguments, and then if you can't refute it, then you're done, basically, in his eyes, and then he'll just hound you to say you're not addressing the argument, and that's the way he is. And hey, he's skilled at arguments, but to me, philosophical arguments don't cut it. Like, they really don't, to me.
It's like
everybody else, but yeah.
If I beat you at chess, and I'm a better chess player than you, who really gives a shit?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of a good analogy, right? Yeah, it really is. So, I mean, I thought, what do you think of this example? Like, during these arguments, of course, this has been going on for days, and been listening to all this stuff. Now, what about like, a lot of the analogies were used, like they were trying to use like physical laws, like physics law, that types of laws, like the law of gravity and whatever. And they were trying to use those as analogies, which were bad, right? They just don't fit, because they don't fit with biology, right?
Yeah, and that's another interesting discussion that,
right.
What is a law?
That's been a part of these arguments back and forth. But what do you think about this analogy, right? You have a situation where now we have quantum physics, right? So quantum, excuse me, you have quantum physics that, we know very little about, or, we're still trying to figure all that shit out, right? So, and we don't have a theory of quantum gravity, right? And why is that? Is that because we just don't have the information, we just don't have the knowledge to create that yet, right?
Yeah, we don't have a math.
Right. So wouldn't that be a good example of this situation where you just don't have, there's so much information that we just don't have all the information, and you just can't pinpoint, even though natural selection is a mechanism, and you can see it working in certain situations, but you just can't pinpoint it because there's so much there that you just can't. And also the length of time, right? It takes for things to happen in evolution, that it's just near impossible to actually set up experiments and things like that to be able to pinpoint and make accurate predictions, right? I mean, well, I don't know. What do you think?
Another example I thought of is the three-body problem, which has to do with gravity. If you have three bodies, there's absolutely no way to make predictions. We don't have the computational power. I think we can numerically approximate it or try to figure it out. But the three-body problem, I mean, if you have two bodies in gravity, you can write the equations. But if you add a third body, you're fucked.
Right, then it's over. Too much. Right. So it's kind of like that. It's just too much, and we don't have the capability right now. But maybe someday we will. Maybe we'll have the computer power someday, or whatever, or just eventually, we continue to do science, so science continues to improve. So, maybe we'll have the answer someday, or maybe not. Who knows? But
what the hell's wrong with YouTube? It's keeps giving us an error code. Please try again later. Very often. I don't know what the hell they're having, like an overload or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, Nestle, I thought of opening this up with you and Danny, if that's what you guys want to do later.
I think we have decided to go on Danny's stream to talk about this.
Okay, good, yeah. That'll be okay, because I'm not sure how long I want to go today. I have a burnout problem. And I think we're going to do a new paper tonight. We're going to do one of John Maddox's favorite papers next, called Pragmatic Information in Biology and Physics. It's by Roederer, and it's one of the ones I think Maddox has in his folder. If it isn't, he always talks about this. Royal Society came out with this special issue in 2016 on information, and it's one of his big ones. And one of the papers in that Philosophical Transactions is Pragmatic Information in Biology and Physics, and I believe we're going to do that one later on. So Danny said he'll do it here if you want. If you want to have a conversation with Danny, we'll keep the room just between the two of you, and I won't moderate. I'll just let you guys go at it.
I think it also CRISPR also want to have the.
If CRISPR wanted to come in too, okay. CRISPR, you and Danny. Is that fair?
I think I don't know. Maybe you already have decided to go on Danny's.
Well, Danny said he would do it here if I want.
Let me ask for one more time.
Danny, be good now until we're done. I want to be the nice Danny, like the softer, gentler speed of sound. I've been doing such a good job of being softer and gentler.
The weird thing is that Nestle did recognize something. There was something to the argument, but he thinks he came either with some sort of reply as well. So what's strange to me is
Danny, your mic is really you got the wrong mic again, I think.
Oh, is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Nestle, I want to know what you do take from Fodor in terms of accepting, and then that's let's start there. Like, what is it? I think last time we discussed this, it seems like you did understand the argument. So.
Danny, are you fading off again, or what the fuck are you doing?
I'm getting a drink. Okay. No, I was waiting for Nestle.
Don't drink and talk.
Oh, I think I was just busy messaging CRISPR to say that we are doing this here. So,
okay, guys, I'm gonna bow out and just let this run. Okay.
Okay. So, first of all, what CRISPR was saying, I don't think this has to do. I think this is peripheral to Fodor, but it is an objection to natural selection. Is that a theory that only can, I guess, establish itself post hoc? I think that doesn't come off as a prima facie issue. Nestle?
I'm not really understanding what you just said. So sorry.
So what CRISPR was saying is that we can only come to understand the selection process. That's to say, when at the point of differentiating selection for and selection of, that's post hoc. Which, if he's suggesting that the theory is involved in that, and it's just post hoc analysis, a post hoc analysis. I think the idea is that theories are supposed to. I think it's is the Latin salva. I mean, I don't want to use the wrong Latin word.
Don't use Latin word, please.
You might. No, I'm glad I was about to say, but you might have recognized it. But the idea is supposed to be post. It's supposed to be post-hoc. Prior to. No, you don't want theories. If the theory only well, there's that too. But the idea is that the theory is supposed to be able to predict ex ante. Is that? I think there's a specific term that's used in philosophy of science. I think it's ex ante specifiable, but I'm making sure.
I think it's ex ante. I think is what you're looking for.
Yeah, the idea is that, like, if there's a theory about drinking water, right, then if the theory applies in some situation, then it's supposed to predict an observation prior to the actualization of that situation.
Based on forecasts rather than actual results.
Right, yes, right.
Yeah.
And what CRISPR seemed to suggest is that natural selection operated post hoc. Or maybe he's suggesting that the distinguished selection for and selection of happens post hoc, and natural selection you could. Well, then what is natural selection supposed to forecast? I guess.
Well, compare that to the weather. I mean, it only works for about 3 days. And
yeah, well, I don't think there are any theories of weather or laws of weather.
Yeah, there are. There are a hell of a lot of weather information.
I think weather is more accurately described by chaos theory, and I'm not really well versed with chaos theory, but I think it has some rules.
No, but they have a lot of laws that they start with, and then they model it on a computer. But it failed within 3 or 4 days because of the effects of chaos. And it's the same thing with biology. It has the same effect. There's this turbulence in the environment itself. But I think biology could make predictions for 20, 50, 100 years for a particular ecosystem.
Yeah, but the predictive power of evolution doesn't really come about the future. Like, we don't really predict much about the future, but we predict things that happen in the past. Like, for example, predicting transition of fossils, for example. That's what we predict to have seen in the fossil record.
With theories that forecast, like the weather, we do the damn best we can, and then we accept the fact that we don't know everything that's going to happen in the world.
Yeah.
So,
I think that most philosophers of science, including the ones that give a dissent to Fodor, don't want to understand theories as things that are utilized to predict natural accidents. Right. The fact that there's a hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, that's a natural accident. That wasn't necessitated by natural laws.
Right. Although you can make some statistical prediction, like you can make predictions that based on climate change, more severe hurricanes will become.
Yeah, I don't want to dispute that,
yeah,
and
right.
I think that biology can do that. No one wants to dispute that. In terms of what a law of nature is purported to be, is that it explains the necessities that occur in our world, not the accidents.
Well, in that sense, like by such a strict sense of law, I don't think there are many laws, at least none that I am aware of about.
Right, and that's precisely Fodor's point: is that there are no theories of evolution, nor are there laws of evolution. Now, he's not suggesting that there can't be, okay, but he gives some reasons for why there are none. But he thinks that evolution is a process guided by laws. It's just not going to be laws of biological kind. It's going to be laws of physics, right? So the idea is that what it ultimately explains any necessity with respect to gene replication will be the way that there will be laws of physics, laws of motion, or whatever. But it's not going to be laws of nucleotides or laws of DNA, which are biological kinds.
Right. Well, I don't know, but there are actually some like statistical laws that are involved in, for example, in population genetics. We have like many descriptions of the processes involved.
Probabilistic laws. I've heard of those. Yeah. I think those are legitimate laws, but the way I understand those is they only really apply to like cases of, like, let's say radiation, where like 50% of the time there's a law in which 50% of the time you'll emit a beta particle rather than an alpha particle or something like that. Forgive me for my knowledge of physics, but it's something along the lines of that. I'm sure I could be correct.
Half-life, probably you mean.
Yeah, the idea is that the which particle is emitted at what time is stochastic, and so there's a sort of law-like generalization there, and it's nomological, and it confers necessity. But the point is that the way that the strength of a hurricane, right, and we can generalize about that, but it's not going to be the sorts of generalizations that stem from nomological considerations.
I think we get into the point of like reductionism, like everything essentially boils down to physics, like organisms boil down to cells boil down to molecules, and molecules boil down to chemistry, and chemistry boils down to like eventually you get to the quantum mechanics aspect of it. But to have a theory of biology being made of physics only, it becomes like really, really difficult and really not useful to have a description.
Well, look,
based on physics.
I'm not suggesting. I mean, false beliefs can be useful, right? The point.
Right.
Before we move on. Wait, this has
yeah.
nothing to do with our conversation. Actually, I need to address Speed about something. Speed, are you there? Speed. God dang it, Scott, are you there?
I'm here,
okay.
but I'm probably not going to be here for very long. So.
Well, the point is that I didn't mean to hold your stream hostage in the sense that if I just created my own stream, I'd be pulling your viewers. So Christopher and Nessa can do this after the weather report, because I know if you're not the only one, I don't think you're the only.
Hello.
I don't think you're the only one that's not. I don't think you're the only one that's burned out on the topic, or me for that matter. So,
yeah, I'm worried about the chat being burned out on it too.
Yeah,
but
so let's just stop, and then I won't start a stream until during the hours of when you want to be active here. So we can just talk.
Yeah,
we'll talk about something else. I won't start a stream. That way, I pull Nessa and Crisper at the least. I don't know who else would follow.
I don't have a lot of time actually. Like in an hour or two, I will be going to bed. So.
Well, look, we have. You see, you're under the age of 30, and we have plenty of time if that's the case.
What is?
That has nothing to do with it. Anyway, I don't know if you knew it or not, Danny, but old people never sleep. Never. We're always.
But old people tend to die. But old people tend to die.
I mean, if you're 70 years old, the actuarial table says you got like what 15 years yet, so average.
Well, the point is that
I'm going to be here for 37.
Is that what you're going for? I'm going for 80, and after that, I don't think I want to live anymore. But
That's depressing.
I mean, I've seen 80-year-olds, and I just don't want to be like that. But
well, I've seen 80. Hey, you know who's Fauci is like 82.
No, are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go for
81.
I'll go for 83.
Like, well, he's gonna be in good shape in his 90s.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's all about how well you take care of yourself, Danny.
Some people.
I don't take.
If you look at the so-called super centenarians, which are not necessarily people who live to over 100, it's just generally they do. The way that they age is that they basically get to where most people are when they're like maybe mid 50s, and then they just kind of
sit.
They get a little older. It's just, and they're sort of fine. And then the problem is that they die extremely quickly once something happens, right? But they don't have protracted illness. They don't die from like long protracted illness though, right? So, they'll be really healthy, and then they'll get sick, and 2 weeks later they're dead. Whereas most people, it's like, they have like their health just declines, and it just rolls downhill until they die.
Have they figured out why that is? That is
it's
interesting.
Complicated.
Have you heard about Jack LaLanne? He died at 96, and the reason he died, he got pneumonia, and they told him to take it easy, but he was like bench pressing 300 pounds. He refused to stop doing his workouts, and the fact that he did a workout actually killed him. Because,
actually, that is extremely typical of this group. Is that he probably would have died if he hadn't done the workout, right? The pneumonia that was probably his number up, right? Yeah. But it was going to be something that was just going to like, all right, this is good enough. You're dead, and 2 weeks later you're out. But
all right,
he was in perfect health up till that point.
I'm gonna bow out. But before I go, I want to ask David one question. David, are you there?
David is. Yes.
Yeah, David, what's a non-philosophical argument?
Well, that's
You're right. There isn't one. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yours, buddy.
But
no one who has been married. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I've been married, and there are some arguments that were very non-philosophical.
Well, the reasoning employed is very philosophical, right?
I feel like you're wrong is a non-philosophical argument.
Probably.
Up yours, buddy, is a non-philosophical argument.
Let me extend I'll say extend an olive branch here to you guys, right? With respect to Fodor. I mean, I was a younger creationist. I already had issues with natural selection, but not the Fodorian sense. But when I was presented in Fodor, I felt like it was just too high in the clouds. And what I was thinking about was Darwin's finches, right? When someone says natural selection is false, they think about something like Darwin's finches, and they're like, "How is what happened there false?" So
the hilarious thing to me about young Earth creationism and Fodor is not saying that natural selection in the sense that organisms evolve because of selective pressures is false. He's saying that it's not a scientifically viable bit of conjecture, right? Which is not relevant to whether or not it happens.
Oh, well, I think if it happens, is explanatory, though.
Well, so this is the thing, is that it's actually, so you mentioned something that I think is extremely on point, which is we talked about quantum physics and radioactive decay, right? And so the theories involved there are predictive in the sense that they predict probabilistically the rate at which decays will occur, but they do not predict which specific atom will decay at which specific time. And in the same way, the natural selection that we're talking about here is predictive in the sense that it is making a generic and generalized prediction about changes in phenotypes over time, but it's not making a prediction about which specific allele will be selected for which specific reason at which specific time.
Okay,
that is not what it's doing.
I'm going to respond to that in a way where it can end, and it's not going to be so much of a rebuttal, so much as I've heard of this objection, right? And or this response rather, and I just want to say that I differentiate between what we can predict based on probability versus a probabilistic law. But I understand that that's a maneuver, and I understand also that in the literature, many people that have tried to defend natural selection against Fodor reject the notion of natural selection being a probabilistic law. But I'll leave it at that.
Oh, do we still go on to a hangout with you, Danny?
No. Let's let the weather report run, because I don't want to. Even if I take 5 viewers, I don't want to hurt.
And one thing I'll say about that is, I don't know if you were really just wanting this to be you and I, or
I don't care who joins. I don't care who joins.
I'm gonna be watching Erica's debate at 8:00 or 7 Central, 8 Eastern. Somebody about Bigfoot.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't really care. I don't really care what you guys do from here on out, because we don't have a hell of a lot to cover today. If you want to go at it now, you can. It's up to you. I mean,
but I think that there are angry people in the chat, Speed.
Are there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, well, I mean, I care about as much about the angry people in the chat as I do about whatever it was Jack was trying to say while I was talking over him.
It's just one of those things where I was listening to Jack, and
I think y'all. I know this is gonna. Well, I don't think this is much coming from me, but if you have any trust in my judgment, which I know many people here do not, I would let Jack interrupt, because he doesn't interrupt for no reason. But that's. Well, just, I mean,
I don't interrupt for no reason either. I mean, I was interrupting him because he was responding to the thing that I had already said with a thing he had already said, which is not very useful, right? The fact that he wouldn't let me make that point, and the fact that he got real mad about it, kind of told me that, okay, well, this is just an obvious weak spot I can poke him on.
Yeah.
So I did, because I wanted to see what would happen.
I don't really think it's a weak spot, though.
I also found it strange when he was trying to explain like the difference between like a coextensive or like a spandrel and an adaptation. He repeated it himself, and he also went on this weird tangent on like Gould and Lewinton and such. Like we don't need to know the entire history of this. Like, make your point.
Like, and I've read that paper more than once. So like I mean, so it's, but anyway.
Well, look, I'm tempted to continue the conversation, but yeah, well, this is something to talk about.
Yeah, for the people in chat, we're probably gonna like chop the weather report if you guys do not continue it here. We're gonna end kind of early today, so go ahead, have your talk.
I want Atheist Junior to come in. Yeah, David.
Between you and Jack, right? You guys obviously, you love the philosophical arguments, and is it the case that you guys like that argument? Number one, because it's controversial, and it's got a strong.
There's probably an element of that,
and it's it's a strong argument. It's hard to refute, right? So. I guess I would say
those could be for me myself.
Right?
I think it's an interesting argument in the sense that I accept it, but it's also very provocative, right? Because you go into a channel like this, who, is basically a shrine to evolutionary biology, and say natural selection is non-explanatory. What kind of response do you expect?
Bingo.
So you're
right.
So you say
But that's the reason why you guys like that argument, because it's.
I just want to make it.
I'm not arguing about Platonism. Y'all are not interested in Platonism, right? Y'all are interested in stuff like natural selection.
Let CRISPR talk.
If y'all were a bunch of Platonists, then I would have brought up something else.
Yeah, I know.
No, I very, very strongly opposed to that. No, I was going to say that you basically bring up Fodor for the same reason that I make points about species anti-realism to the
you're an anti-realist
to the people in my
about
program.
That? You're an anti-realist about species?
Yes, a species is a hypothesis that people put forward.
Earphones, guys, hold on.
But that's pretty based. Because I'm an anti-realist with respect to all biological categories, though. But
no, I think that there are some real biological categories, but like. I mean, a species is a hypothesis, right? That's the thing. Is that I don't know why people don't get that. But
I'm reading a paper about this, and I might change my view because the idea, what this is basically toying with, is mereological nihilism, it's related. But there might not be a substantive debate, and I'll let you know if there's anything interesting with respect to how it impacts species and other biological natural kinds. Hey, Atheist Junior, what's your problem with me? I just want to know.
Hey,
sorry, I couldn't hear you guys before, but I just think you make the entire show about you and kind of suck all the air out of the room, and I don't know. I don't find it very interesting when you're on.
What do you want? You can change the topic. The topic is now yours.
Okay, well, maybe it sounds selfish, but I know Speed and some of the people in the chat were talking about the interview I did with Aaron, and I wouldn't mind talking about that because I thought it went really well.
Yeah,
and
I did. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised, honestly, that Aaron, he sort of opened up near the end, and he told me some personal stuff that I had never really heard him talk about before, and I was surprised that he kind of went there.
Well, he was drinking a lot of beer.
Yeah, that is.
I'm sure he got loosened up, and that tends to happen when you drink a good beer.
Jorge might stop in and talk to us about gold, about the size of gold lumps.
Well, wait, I had a quick question for CRISPR. Isn't the reason why they posit species is because, like, I don't know a lot about taxonomy, obviously, but I don't know whether but are there specific reasons why they use species as a category?
Convenience, more
convenient, yeah.
So So the way that I would want to phrase it is that a species is a hypothesis with relation to the interrelatedness of populations, right? And so when I say that these organisms over here are one species, and these organisms over there are another species, what I'm really saying is, I propose that there is a evolutionary difference in the phylogenetic relationship in the lineage of these two populations, that they are divergent from one another, such that they form two fully distinct lineages, right?
Clades, like separate clades.
Fully distinguishable, I should say.
Right.
They could still hybridize or something, but they're still distinguishable.
So,
but that is the thing is that the fact that I'm saying fully distinguishable means that what we're really seeing is not necessarily a real thing in the biology of these organisms, right? It's not like biological species concept is just silly. That's useless. Like, oh, they can't interbreed. Who cares?
Have you seen the recent video from Gutsick Gibbon with the elephant? Like, make it stop, please.
Well, right. So yeah, and then when we go out and we test that hypothesis, we find more individuals. We see if their morphology agrees with the previous ones, if the ranges agree with the previous range, if the genetics agrees with the previous genetics, whatever else, and see if it is consistent with that hypothesis that these are in fact two distinct clades. And that's it. That's all it is. It's a hypothesis. So that's what I mean. That may not be what other people think they mean when they talk about species, but I think that's actually what they mean.
I have a question. Like, if we no longer consider species a useful concept, then how do we describe?
No, it's very. Sorry, hold on. No, I did not say I don't consider it to be a useful concept.
Sorry.
Right? It's very useful in terms of people as scientists going out and classifying the world, right?
Right.
But it's not. It's not talking about something that is intrinsic to the biology of the individual organisms.
Well, I guess my question would be: is what would, because you said it's an hypothesis, right? But do you think there's something we can find which show that species are actually a thing, and and not just a classification we use? I don't know. I don't know if I asked that.
I think I know what you mean. And so if you think about a older conception of what a species is, right? Well, let's talk about the young Earth creationist conception of what a species is.
Oh boy,
that seems to be the one. That seems to be the relevant one. These are independent and independently created kinds, right? So if we have independently created kinds, well, that's a real thing, right? There is something intrinsic to the existence of these organisms such that they really are different in something intrinsic to their biology. Specifically, the fact that they were independently created. So if we could find that, that would show that there's something intrinsic to the biology of the organism that is that allows you to make the distinction between the two clades. It could also be that there is a fundamental process in biology that creates hard stops, right? Where once you get to a certain point in the differentiation between two populations, that the level of gene flow between them intrinsically drops off because of this process. Now, if that were the case, then I think you could reasonably argue that identifying whether or not two populations have crossed this threshold would constitute something intrinsic to their biology, indicating them as two separate species. I don't think that is the case.
Yeah, the gene flow is context dependent, like whether they are close to each other geographically, or maybe they mate at different times in the year or something like that, right? So,
well, yeah, thanks for that. It was interesting.
It could be a lot of things. I mean, you have independent species that live in the exact same place and mate year round, and are completely infertile, and will produce not just viable, but in fact fertile offspring, right? And they don't in the wild.
I have a quick question that's related to this, but you know how they say that two species are different, that they can't interbreed. Well, there are some species. I don't know what the hell your speech just did. Well, there are some species that do interbreed and produce offspring, like the liger. Like, what do you speed? Anyways, you know what I mean? Like there are. Wow, what are you doing?
Are you trying to summon me?
Are you trying to distract me? I was making.
Make a point. Make your point.
Okay.
Don't let me interfere with you.
Well, you keep putting somebody's icon full screen. It's distracting.
Yes.
There's a reason for it, but go ahead. Make your point.
Is it possible to troll your own channel?
So
yes.
The point I was trying to make is that there are some species that can interbreed. Moving on.
Okay.
Whisper, if we realize that the species is not an intrinsic concept, would it also change our perception of how speciation would be described?
No, I can't think of why. I mean, it's just cladogenesis is the thing we're interested in, right?
Also, speed. I need to say something. If you were doing that to get me to get to the point, it didn't work. It made things worse.
I know. I was doing that to let us know that we do want to talk to Orge about gold.
Yeah, I know, but it's like I'm trying to get my point, and then you do that.
God, I'm so annoying. I am so annoying. I know it. Okay, guys.
Poor Midnight. He's upset. I'm sorry.
No. It's not your fault. It's speed. I'm trying to make a point, and then he's distracting me with your icon. Like, can I get to the point, please?
What's wrong with my icon? I like my icon.
No, there's nothing wrong with your icon. I love
robots. What's wrong with his icon?
My icon, Midnight?
What are you saying about it? Are you? I
never said there's anything wrong with his icon.
Yeah. Why do you hate his icon so much?
I don't talk about that for the next 2 hours.
Do you guys not hear me? I said I don't.
I'm deaf in both ears, so
you're fading out, Midnight.
I want to know what Daddy thinks about Midnight not liking my icon. We should bring him back.
Jesus Christ!
I like how low resolution it is.
Can we get back to the topic? Forget I said anything.
Okay.
I was just giving shit to speed.
Whisper. Actually,
that's always
perhaps
good.
Speciation would actually show. Be one reason why the species concept is not really intrinsic, right? Perhaps because.
Oh yeah, right. So when you have the initial divergence of two populations, when does it become two species? Right. That is entirely down to some scientists saying, "Sure, this is good enough." Like that. That is a. We have
to put the line somewhere, so why not here?
Right, and it's like what we can say with absolute certainty on the basis of seeing it in the wild in the populations is that there's some animals here, some animals there, and they're a bit different from one another, and genetically they fall out as two independent clades with some gene flow, with some evidence of hybridization here or there. But still fully resolvable. Is that a species? Is that two species? Is it one? Is it two? I don't care. That's for the taxonomist to figure out, right?
Yeah, the only time you care is when you want to classify a bunch of plants and you get down to a certain level and it doesn't really matter. It's like you pretty much got
right. Because I mean,
which complicates things.
Yeah, I mean, like my interest is how are these things related to one another, and for that, I don't need to talk about species.
No,
But people want me to talk about species, so I do. But like that's not my goal in life.
There's also goes into the like which species concept is more useful. Like we pretty much say that the biological species concept is really outdated at the best. So
the hypothetical species concept is the one that's the most useful. It is species anti-realism. It is saying that when we talk about species, we're talking about a hypothesis of the relationship of different lineages.
All right,
that's it.
Isn't that the phylogenetic species concept or equivalent?
No, not exactly. Because the phylogenetic species concept is the idea. It's basically on the basis of the cladistics of it, right? And that is actually something that is informed by the data. So in other words, you look at the data and you say these are species, and then you see more data and you say, oh, I guess they're not species, right? But what I'm saying is, I'm never saying that things are species. I'm making a hypothesis about the relationship, and I'm calling that hypothesis a species, right? But that's not the same thing.
Oh, it's not the difference in methodology; it's the difference in the conclusion.
It's a difference in the philosophy of it, right? Is that when I say that A and B are two different species, what I'm saying is I have a hypothesis about the relationship between A and B. When the biological species concept guy says that A and B are two different species, he's saying that there is something intrinsic to A and B such that they can't reproduce, and that's why they are actually, in reality, two different species. When the phylogenetic species concept says A and B are two different species, they're saying that you run out the data and you see that population A and population B are independent of one another in the phylogeny, and therefore are in reality two different species.
Right.
But neither of them is treating species as a hypothesis.
So it can also change. The hypothesis can also change. For example, if like polar bears and brown bears would recombine again for whatever reason, and then you have just one interbreeding population, then you have just one species again, or one hypothetical
Well, yes,
species.
it's no problem, because I mean, for me right now, I look at the data, and I make a hypothesis that these are two independent populations, right?
Yeah.
And if they coalesce in the future, I wasn't wrong. I'm not wrong now to say that they're two independent populations. It's just that in the future, they won't be two independent populations. There will not be two independent populations anymore, right? There'll only be one.
Right.
But at no point have I ever been wrong in this entire series of events, right?
Someone in the chat asks you whether you're an atheist or not.
Sure.
Oh.
I love that. Sure, I'm an atheist. Just leave it at that.
Yep. We all be atheists here.
Oh wow, I really love Amy's new icon.
I think most biologists are atheists.
I know.
Well,
I don't think it's because of biology. It's because it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous myth. Face it. I mean, who the hell? It's like
it's biology. It's a higher percentage. It's a higher percentage than physics.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's like believing in Santa. You know, I rejected it at about 9 years old.
But here's the thing, though, is that as somebody who's been working in biology for quite some time now, I've worked with a decent number of religious people from many different faith backgrounds, and I got to tell you, the ones I've worked with, they've all been fantastic scientists, right?
Yeah,
so,
man.
like, I will, if somebody wants to talk to me about their religion, that's fine. I will, right? But I'm not going to go after other people about their religion.
Yeah, that
That's
makes
not what
sense.
gets me motivated.
Yeah.
Now, if I hear somebody talking about young Earth creationism, that's stupid.
Oh, that just lights
that I will
my
go
match.
after.
That lights
But
my fire.
I guess the question I have is, is that what separates them from, the scientists on, I say scientists, from YouTube, you know what I mean? What the fuck is his name? Standing for Truth, praises him like a god.
Sanford.
What was that?
Tor, right?
Sanford?
Tor. You know what I mean? Well,
Tor,
then again, Tor isn't really a biologist. But no, I meant
Right.
Sigard. You know what I mean? He works in biology, but apparently he's.
I have no real problem with Sigard. I think he's a great
Yeah,
guy.
he's an example of somebody.
No. I
who,
meant.
Sigard is an example of somebody who
I think
can do science in spite of what he believes.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that he and I would maybe disagree on like some finer points about the probabilities associated with some aspects of abiogenesis. But that's like,
yeah.
like,
I
I
guess.
don't, I'm not going to argue with him about that.
Yeah.
Well, bring your mic down, Leo.
Yeah, he always
Okay.
forgets to do that. I guess I guess what I'm trying to say is that I've seen Sigard injecting God in biology, whereas Crispr said the people he work with really don't do that.
Think
Sai doesn't do that. I don't think.
No, he
I've
doesn't.
seen him on Twitter do that. Like you say, oh,
Are you thinking about by any chance? Like I've seen Fuzzrana do that, but not.
Yeah, but not. I haven't seen
Who's doing what where.
So like
Sigard.
Sai does what on Twitter?
For fuck's sake, hold on, Leo.
Sai's position.
Oh, excuse me for asking for clarification.
No, it's fine. It's just everyone's talking at once.
My impression of Sai is that he thinks that science is real and also neat, and that as a religious believer, he thinks that God probably did it, but he did it the way science says it happened.
Yep.
Wait,
yeah,
what? That makes
okay.
no sense.
Yeah.
If God did it, but
No,
it
I'm
happened
sorry,
scientifically,
Leo.
then how do you know that God did anything?
Leo,
Behind
sorry.
the curtains.
if you have a faith position of a creator God, right? Let's leave aside for the moment whether or not it's reasonable to have a faith position on anything.
Well,
right?
I think it can be reasonable.
Wait, okay, great. So we're going to leave aside the faith position. We're say he has a faith position that there exists a creator God, right? So he has that, and now he accepts all of science. What is the logical conclusion of those two things?
Yeah.
That he has a faith position and he accepts all of science?
Yeah.
So,
It would depend on what his faith position is in.
He has the faith position that there exists a creator God.
Yeah.
So what's the logical conclusion of that faith position and an acceptance of science?
I don't think that there inherently is one.
Sigard
there's a very clear conclusion of those two things. If you accept both of those things, you will think the creator God must have done things the way science said things happened.
Yeah.
That's just the logical outcome of those two.
Well, it is
those two things in your head at the same time.
Yeah, it is a logical outcome, but there are people that might not necessarily adhere to that.
Well, I'm saying that I think that's my impression of what Sigard thinks.
Anyway, what is it that he supposedly did on Twitter? That's what I wanted to know.
That's a very good question. I have no idea.
Midnight?
No, it's I haven't paid attention to his Twitter in a while, but generally whenever I did, he was talks about the complexity of DNA proves God's existence, or some stuff.
Okay, Midnight. Sigard's position is agnostic. He's pretty agnostic about how God did it, and he would even accept the position that CRISPR just laid out. So he's agnostic about it. He has his skeptical, he has his doubts about the probabilities, and he will express those when he's hanging out with men.
Yeah, but I mean, Sigard does run versions of the irreducible complexity argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to get us.
He wrote a whole book about how life shows that it was designed perfectly by God. I mean, come on now.
He
I don't.
he does, but at the very least, he's smart enough to limit it to
Yeah,
abiogenesis.
I'm not comparing him to like James Tour or even other creationists. He's way above them. But the fact of the matter is, he still makes the point that science probably might solve abiogenesis, but we don't know that life was, is too complex. It had to have been designed by God. That's still fundamentally an argument that he makes.
Yeah, but the thing is that even whenever he talks about it, my impression has always been that he's putting that forward as sort of a more of a faith position than one informed by any science.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And honestly, I'm fine. I don't care.
Exactly.
If you're clear that that's where you're coming from with it. Like, if you want to say to me, as a matter of faith, I think that God created, and as a matter of faith, I think that abiogenesis is irreducibly complex and requires God. You do you.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That's fine.
That's why I like Sai, is that he doesn't sit here and say, oh well, science has failed to prove abiogenesis, so it must be. That's not the way that he argues. It's more of a, my belief is that this is what happened, but will science figure it out? I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Right.
And that's why I respect him.
Well, the thing is,
just to clarify,
I think that
I have no issues with Guard. I was just pointing out that that you can be a good scientist and not really injecting religion into it, like Christopher said.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the real thing with abiogenesis that always, I think, really confuses some of the creationists is that there's always three phases of understanding something. Step 1, you have no model. Step 2, you have a bunch of models. Step 3, you have one model. Right? Abiogenesis, we're currently on step 2.
Yep.
We have so many different models, and all of them are incomplete but plausible in their independent pieces.
Yep.
We may never get to step 3 for abiogenesis.
So I
think that we've got enough. We've got enough that it's pretty clear that it happened in some way. We may not have accessible to us enough data to make a firm conclusion about which one it is, but it's pretty clear that it was one of them. Or
Yeah.
not even one of the models we have now, but it was something happened.
I do have a question. Do you think that they will ever, they will, like the way I see abiogenesis, as you said, we have different models, but I think each model has a negative truth in there to where once you find those negative truths and bring them together, you get the picture. You know what I mean? So you have like, let's say 100 models right now, but eventually you'll be able to come up with one model, because you could be like, okay, what I mean, piece A, piece A makes sense. Piece B, like, you know what I mean? Like I said, I'm not.
You mean where the model develops piecewise?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He's saying that, like, you have these different models of how abiogenesis might be true, and some people are saying that only one of them will prove to be true, or multiple of them could concurrently be true at the same time.
Well, no,
as I understand it.
Hold on. Let me take a crack at this.
Yeah, go ahead. Because I suck.
Because I can say it all at once. Is that it's, I think that a lot of people find one interesting phenomenon, and they take that and they build on it to produce a model of a potential explanation for abiogenesis. And many of those individual pieces may be a portion of what actually happened, right? And that could be. Or it could be that some of those things are coincidental, and or some of those things could have allowed for abiogenesis. Maybe there are 50 different models for abiogenesis, because there actually are 50 different ways for abiogenesis to happen.
That too, yes.
And it only happened one way on Earth, right? But it could have happened all of these other ways, and it was trying, and one of them got there first. Who knows, right? It's right.
Hubert Yaki wrote a whole book supposedly proving that we can never know which model, because he's sort of been and my opinion is that there are just that there are a lot of models that would have worked.
Well,
And
I mean,
we're never going to know which one. We don't have the evidence anymore.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that's a
for
very
me-
good way of going about it.
For me, I feel like we got to give strong support to RNA world because it still is an RNA world.
It still
So-
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
The
all
way
sort of pin on. They all pivot around RNA. Actually,
The
Yeah,
way
well,
that
'cause that's life. Life is
the
all
way
about
that I understand the field is that the question of whether life developed naturally, well, that wasn't really ever in question. The question was about what processes would have done it. I've never understood this mentality of, because humans do not have the capability of identifying some physical process, therefore the results of that process must not have arisen through physical means. I've never, which is mainly because that's just one big fat textbook example of an argument from ignorance.
Yeah.
Well, Leo, it's it's now obviously I'm not saying I believe this, but it's also possible, it's also possible, that aliens seeded the planet.
Yeah,
Again,
but that's not supernatural. That would still be
no,
physical.
yeah, I know
mechanisms.
that's still physical. That's
Well,
you're right. Like, but like what I'm trying to say is that you can have a natural explanation, that life arose by itself, or you could have the explanation where aliens did it. But then, where the fuck did the aliens come from? Did the aliens?
Well, if,
like,
if
know what I mean?
aliens created life on Earth, then I don't think it matters where they came from. We don't need to know that to be capable of explaining life on Earth through the seeding of the planet by aliens. We don't need to know
Right.
where the aliens came from to know
It doesn't
that.
even
Right.
have to be
Well, that
aliens,
raises-
because it could be like the asteroid that was found in Australia that had like complex amino acids on it. It could just be a rock that landed on Earth.
Right, but that's
Well,
had
that
those
probably
molecules
is how a
on it.
lot
Doesn't
of
have to be from an
compounds
alien.
arrived on
Yeah,
the
but
Earth.
okay. The thing is that if that asteroid hit the Earth with living organisms on it, right?
They'd have died in the
Even if-
impact. It'd have been too energetic. The
maybe.
impact with the planet, no. Like, if a meteor struck Earth at 70,000 miles an hour, any type of life on that, as far as we know, is going to die. Tardigrade.
What about
Tardigrades
extremophiles?
die in that. It's way too much energy. Way too much
Well-
energy, entirely too fast.
right.
But
Yeah, but what if it
I don't
hits
know
slower?
anybody that thinks that life
What if it hits slower?
at what, like 15,000? The amount, that's still equivalent to like 13 atomic bombs, star bombs. That life is just not good. Anyway,
Yeah, maybe
I've-
just chemical.
I've never heard anybody
Yeah,
lend
Dan.
serious merit to the
Yeah,
idea
Dan.
that life was brought on meteors, but like the compounds that led to the development of life, or the compounds that led to the compounds that led to the development of life, were probably delivered by asteroid impacts. Water was probably delivered to the Earth by asteroid impacts,
Sure.
and who knows what was in that water as it came here.
can we take a short break and talk about gold? Do you know? Do you know about native gold deposits and how big they can get, and any laws that we might find, Orge?
There's no law revolving around that. Native gold deposits work the same way any native mineral deposit works. Hydrothermal solutions running through cracks and rocks. That's the predominant
Yeah.
theory.
How about native aluminum deposits?
Bauxite, I
No,
believe.
I was just sorry. I was just making a joke.
Oh, I want to make a comment on what Leo just said. Like I am of the opinion that most like virtually all of the organic anything more than carbon dioxide and methane, wasn't brought back on Earth by meteorite. I think it's more like I think. My primary suspect of the origin of life is a metabolism first scenario where the complex organic molecules were generated on Earth.
I don't take any one particular model, something first model, as being the one. From what I've heard, just from doing research in the field and listening to lectures, it seems that most professionals don't think one of these models would have been true, that likely a set of them would have been occurring in different regions on the planet Earth, and through a bunch of natural processes, the whole shebang got mixed up into a soup and life popped out. Obviously, I'm being a bit hyperbolic with how I stated that, but
I don't believe in the soup, no. I think that makes that causes many more problems than it solves.
Well, when I like I just said, I was being a little bit hyperbolic with what I
Right.
said, but the word soup is a good word to use because it implies that there are a bunch of different compounds all mixed together, which is what the word soup is taken to mean in this particular context.
Right, but I favor the hypothesis of like a alkaline hydrothermal vent scenario where within the hydrothermal vent there isn't a soup, but there are how do you call it, redox chemistry that drives the fixation of carbon dioxide into organic molecules, like similar to the reverse citric acid cycle that generates increasingly more complex biomolecules.
Yeah, it's possible. If that happened, I don't think it was the only thing that was creating the molecules necessary for life. And I don't think all the molecules and the processes that life used, I don't think there was one thing that gave rise to them all. Like I said, there were numerous. RNA could have been developing first in some area. Metabolisms could have been developing first in another area. Membranes could have been developing first in another area. I don't think that there's one of these models that explains all of the origins of life. I don't even think that would be possible.
I think pretty much everything happens within the hydrothermal vent.
Yeah, that was my point, Leo.
Wait, what was your point?
You had a point?
That multiple things were going on at once.
Yeah.
Or sections of each model could be concurrently true.
Thank you.
Well, and I could very well be wrong on this because this is more of something that I guess you could say insinuated just from my examination of the academic literature, as it seems that the consensus among professionals is that it isn't one of these models that's likely true. There's probably like 2 or 3 of them that were concurrently true on the prebiotic Earth and collectively led to the arisal of life.
That's my favorite.
Well, I think like it's difficult to really talk about it. I think like you have, for example, the RNA hypothesis and the metabolism first hypothesis, but of course they aren't necessarily incompatible in the sense that like there was nobody disagrees that there was an RNA first before DNA, but the metabolism first.
Tangelo does.
Tangelo does. But the metabolism first folk object that's saying that the RNA cannot really, it's really difficult to get the ribonucleotides just in a soup and by itself, and also polymerize within a soup too. But you need to have a system that is far from equilibrium to get the initial state that is reminiscent of metabolism, basically. But yeah, the
early Earth.
I fully recommend the presentations made by Eric Smith, who's really he explains this really more elegantly than anybody I know of. Eric Smith. I can put his name in the side chat.
By the way, while we were on the topic, I did want to mention just an interesting fact. All of the gold in our solar system resulted from a neutron star merger about 1,000 light years away from our solar system, right as it was beginning to form. And so roughly about 15 to 2,500 years later, here comes this massive wave of heavy elements like gold, uranium, iron, lead, silver, cobalt, iridium, strontium into our solar system. So most of the heavy elements in our solar system were the result of a neutron star merger that occurred roughly 1,000 light years away.
Does that mean it was like a meteorite made of gold?
No.
That would be
those fucking things are a nuisance. If
I believe correctly, neutron stars, they have the atoms in a sort of nuclear pasta, right? Like you have
the structure of neutrons. Makes weird. The neutrons are so dense that they make weird structures as you get down, and the whole nuclear pasta is one theorization of what the internal structure of a neutron star exactly is. We don't really know.
Hang on a second. Christopher, did you get Brainbug's question?
No.
He wanted to know. He wanted to know if you could be reached for a discussion. Brainbug. So
well, I was just saying, like when the neutrons when the neutrons collide,
got me on Discord.
Everybody has Discord now.
Yeah. But I was just saying, when the neutrons collide, the structure of the neutrons, they like basically, how do we call it? They don't fuse because they are already in a structure, but they just,
Well, it's neutron degeneracy.
Yeah, they break apart and then they all form the heavy elements, right?
So when neutrons start, the reason that you rarely get elements, so supernovae can produce elements like gold and lead, but in very, very, very trace amounts, and that's only during the actual supernova event, because otherwise a star just does not have enough power. The reason that neutron star mergers are where most of the heavy elements come from is because you don't just need a lot of energy, you need a lot of neutrons to build atomic nuclei that large. Stars don't have enough energy nor enough neutrons to do it. But neutron stars, being roughly the size of Manhattan, yet containing the mass of in upwards of almost 2 times what our sun is, have both the energy and the neutrons to create those heavy atomic nuclei.
Yeah.
So when they merge, all the energy that is released pushes a massive cloud of very, very heavy elements. It's just absolutely rich in rare heavy elements outward into the vacuum of space.
Yeah. Like basically in the neutron stars, the neutrons are already packed into a high dense, and when they break apart, they just already.
Some of them will decay,
off.
will capture electrons and decay into protons and form massive atomic nuclei.
Right. It's not like the neutron stars fuse smaller elements into larger elements. It's basically breaking down the larger conglomerate of neutrons into.
I mean, there is sort of a fusion. I mean, there is a nucleosynthesis process going on just because of the intense energy, but it's not going to be necessarily the same process that you would observe in the cores of stars.
Right.
Hey, Leo, while I have you here, I just wanted to bring up maybe it's Saturday night at the Atheist or something you may enjoy. We should maybe review a video of Joel, which is our friend there, explaining the Big Bang. He's got a video, and I actually caught it. I listened to a little bit of it, and he talks.
Somebody
about
should
the Big
link
Bang.
me. Somebody should link me that video so that I can link my video explaining what the Big Bang is in the comments of that video.
We'll have to go over it. It'll be fun. We'll all get a kick out of it.
David, please link me so I can bookmark it.
Hey, Leo, you never send me those things on Twitter.
I'll put it in private.
You know, those papers on Twitter?
What papers?
About consciousness or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
There is no such thing.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Saying there's no such thing as consciousness is like saying there's no such thing as digestion.
He says
there's no such thing as digestion.
He says while having a conscience. God damn it.
I think the phrase "there's no such thing as consciousness," I think it's meant to say the way we have consciousness is different from what we might expect.
Well, of course, consciousness isn't an object that one can point to and say that's a consciousness. But the same is true of digestion. You can't point at an object and say that object is a digestion, because these aren't objects. These are processes which occur in or between objects or parts of objects.
At my age, I really doubt digestion too.
I don't.
Speed, you worry me a lot. I don't know whether you're trolling now or you're just because you rejected and denied mirror neurons too, and that's worrying.
Oh, mirror
That is
neurons
very
are
worrying.
bullshit. Trust me.
No, they're not bullshit. They're literally not bullshit, because mirror neurons are the reason that Amelia Clark suffered her second aneurysm. So I'm sorry. No, that's just false.
Mirror neurons are fucking bullshit.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Okay, so then can you explain to me what process by which Amelia Clark suffered her second subarachnoidal hemorrhage? Because that was the result of something being mirrored because of mirror neurons. So if you could explain how that occurred better than the neuroscientist that she had a discussion with explained it, then I'm all ears.
Oh, send me a fucking link to that. That's got to be a juicy little piece of garbage.
Juicy little was he at Cambridge or Oxford? Neuroscientist. Yeah, that's garbage.
Yeah, what's his name?
I can't remember. Let me.
Carl Drogo. His name's Carl Drogo.
I honestly don't understand. I honestly don't understand Speed's view. I don't know whether he's trolling us or he actually.
No, mirror neurons are bullshit.
Like I said, he just wants to bring up Amelia Clark.
Leo, if I understand correctly, mirror neuron.
Oh my goodness. It's Joel. I got a Joel.
You got a Joel in chat?
I think that's the video. I'm pretty sure. If not, I will make sure I have the correct one.
Holy shit, it's 2 hours long. Fuck that.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I have that
Well,
for Saturday
it's
night.
got a transcript. It's
Leo,
got
would
a
you mind?
transcript.
Would you send that to me also? Like the whole
Send what to you?
It said
Yeah,
Brad-
well,
Leo's got lots of Amelia Cox stuff. You have to be specific.
I actually don't. I have to go to the YouTube channel of her charity and see. Yeah. Oh no, UCL's Professor Nick Ward, I believe. Is this the one, or was it an older one? Okay. Now I'm gonna have to go through all these
because
fucking
I'm always,
videos.
because I'm always.
I'm sorry, I was just interrupted. I want to ask Leo, like mirror neurons are not like single neurons; they are more like a network of neurons, right? The function of mirror neurons.
I don't know. I was told that mirror neurons are neurons that like mirror what other neurons are doing.
I thought they caused empathy, like they cause you to mirror what the neurons of somebody else are doing.
That's the idea, but there's like no specific part of your brain that does just that, and it was sort of just a misnomer that popped up in Pop Sci. And you got to look a little further into it and think about it a little more. It's basically something. They found neurons that basically lit up when you watched other people do things. They called them mirror neurons. They didn't really mean that there were specific neurons that were mirror neurons. They simply meant that some neurons are mirroring what other people do. So that if you...
So that's not bullshit.
Instance, okay, hang on a second. So
sorry. Do all humans have neurons that mirror what other people are experiencing? In this way,
think sociopaths do.
Only if
well,
you
I mean, do all psychologically normal humans?
Yes.
Only if you grow up in a normal environment, basically, like for instance, if you read inside of your brain, right? You're reading something, but you're not speaking it. Your fucking neurons will light up around the same premotor neurons will light up when you actually talk. Word, right?
No, I get
like
that.
It's like that.
What do we call the neurons that light up when you're talking or thinking about talking?
Neurons.
No, but we might classify them as something.
No,
because we can demonstrate empirically that these neurons in this individual are involved in this process, right?
Yes.
Okay, so and we can show that in every person, every psychologically normal person, they have a set of neurons that activate for that process in the same way. They may not be the same neurons, but
they
activate under the same conditions.
Right, and the same neurons will also activate when you think about doing the same movement or when you do the same movement. So we're just mirroring what other people are doing internally in the premotor cortex. So
I think I completely misunderstood whatever mirror neurons are supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the concept definitely makes sense, even if it's not,
Yeah, there was some bullshit that they were a particular kind of neuron, like a particular cell tissue type, right? And no, they're not, and they're not any particular neuron. It's just a whole set of neurons that light up when you when you think about moving.
Are they neurons? Like, is it the same area as the other person that they're watching do it?
The other person would necessarily have, if the other person was doing something, his premotor neurons and his motor neurons would be lit up, right? You'd see the premotor neurons and the motor neurons. So in the person that's watching them, some of those premotor neurons will light up.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was remembering this correctly. So there are regions of the brain that activate when you're doing a particular activity, right?
Correct.
And there is a overlapping region that activates when you're thinking about doing that activity.
Correct.
And there is an overlapping region that activates when you are seen somebody do that activity.
Yeah, we could call those mirror neurons, but we'd be stretching it.
It seems to me that speech problem is more with the phraseology than what it's
But the thing is,
what it does.
The thing is though, is that it sounds like you're saying that because it's not a guarantee that if I like set up a three-dimensional coordinate system in the brain, that the neuron at this coordinate, right, is going to be a mirror neuron for watching somebody drink a glass of water, right?
I think
but nobody claims that in the first place, right?
Yeah. I think speech
is that there are neurons that empirically activate when you observe somebody do a thing, right?
Yeah, they would activate when you did the thing too, or when you were thinking about doing it.
Some of them do. It's not 100%.
So here's my pushback, CRISPR. It's the same thing as when some pop sci article says something about genetics, and people take it in the wrong direction. They think, oh, mirror neurons. We have these special neurons that light up on, in empathy, and it's not like that. It's much more complex than that, and it's just a wrong-headed way to think about it, and it creates more problems, more confusion than clarity. And I push back on that.
So I'll say that
in general.
So I'll say that if a nearly identical set of neurons activate when I watch somebody do a thing, as what would activate when I do a thing, right? Then it stands to reason, although it's not necessarily true, but it stands to reason intuitively that my experience of the activation of those neurons would be very similar, right?
Yeah, you shouldn't call it nearly identical. It's very, very, very unidentical. So it's very fuzzy. But yeah, you're going to have...
But no, you're the one... Actually, you're the one who said that they were the same.
Oh, I did? No.
Yeah, earlier in this conversation.
I don't...
It's a...
Similar.
You have for a given activity, you have three sets of neurons, right? You have the set of doing this, you have the set of thinking about doing this, and you have the set of seeing somebody else do this, right?
Right.
And so, generally speaking,
let me clarify.
These are heavily overlapped, right? And they don't necessarily all activate every time, right?
Okay.
But you can still identify these three overlapping sets.
Well, let me clarify. Let me clarify.
Right.
Okay. If you thought about moving your arm and lifting it up, right? And then 3 minutes later, you thought about moving your arm and lifting it up. Those two sets of neurons would not be anywhere near identical. Okay. They would be similar. We could make a statistical inference about the two areas of neurons, but they would be different every time you moved your arm. So when you're looking at another person, you're definitely not going to get the same set of neurons because of the way neural nets work. They're fuzzily interconnected, right?
Well, yeah, I just want to say something.
That doesn't.
You will say, go ahead.
That doesn't sound like an objection to anything, right? That gets back to the thing that nobody's saying, which is that nobody is saying that we need to be able to point to in a three-dimensional coordinate system that neuron is the thing that does that thing. I don't think anybody is saying that, right?
But I don't think the individual mirror neurons are intrinsically different from any other neuron, right?
No,
it's the activity that makes the difference.
Well, hold on. So it's possible that in the sense that the particular position in a particular individual in a given neural network that neuron is participating in, right, that it is intrinsically different such that it is statistically more likely to participate in a mirror in a mirror response than some other neuron, right? But that doesn't. So, in that sense, it could be that there is something intrinsically different about the individual neuron. But in the sense that, you look at a baby's brain, right, and you say, "Oh, that neuron going to be a mirror neuron when that baby's full grown.
Right, you couldn't tell, yeah.
I mean, isn't that the reason, isn't that the reason why, like why babies mimic what they see? It's like, oh, hey, you know what? I'm seeing my mom, I'm seeing my mom say something, so I'll eventually, like, you know what I mean?
I just wanted to really quickly for midnight. I don't know if this is the discussion where it goes into the because I must have missed something. I thought mirror neurons were something that they're not. Y'all can continue with that discussion, but there was something in Amelia's brain that when her brain developed, that problem mirrored to both sides, which is why she had the two subarachnoidal hemorrhages.
Oh, yeah.
But in this video, she has a discussion with Dr. Bennett Omalu, who is a Nigerian-American physician, forensic pathologist, and neuropathologist, and a professor at the University of California, Davis. He was the first to discover and publish findings on chronic traumatic encephalopathy in American football players while working at the Allegheny County Coroner's Office in Pittsburgh. So he's pretty reputed neuroscientist. And they just have a discussion about what she went through and everything like that. It's actually just a really good discussion in general.
I think what happened. I think the two things have nothing to do with each other. I'm not sure whether the doctor misspoke. It happened.
Well, no. I misunderstood something. I thought when Speed had mentioned mirror neurons, he was speaking about something different. That was my ignorance, not the ignorance of any professional.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just one of those things where I find very interesting because mirror neurons are a way. They may not exist. They may exist, but as Christopher said, it's empirical. So they do exist. How humans are able to form connections with other humans. Now, obviously, hold on. Obviously, it's hard to form connection with everybody you meet, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it seems to me that what this is saying is that there isn't a debate about whether mirror neurons are a thing. There's a debate about whether they're a thing specifically in humans. It seems that they're saying that we've already identified them in other species.
We're primates. Ergo, it stands to reason that we would have mirror neurons too.
Well, I mean, sure, but there are aspects of our genetics that are that other primates either have that we don't, or vice versa.
Go ahead.
The issue is that the experiments that are really good at picking out mirror neurons are not necessarily the most ethical to perform on humans.
Yeah,
exactly.
So the experiments that have been done on humans have given reasonably strong support for their existence in humans. The real problem with the discussion of mirror neurons is in some of the philosophical and psychological discussions, right? Which is to say that people want to say that mirror neurons are entirely responsible for empathy. Well,
not entirely. They play a part.
And I understand intuitively why you might say that they could play a part. It does make sense, right? I mean, if I see somebody experiencing pain, and I experience a twinge of pain in response, that could cause empathy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could cause me to feel mad about the person experiencing pain.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Okay. Instead of saying mirror neurons, say there are neurons that mirror other people's activity. That would be.
Isn't that what mirror neurons are?
Yeah, that's literally why they're called that.
Yeah, like I said, this seems to be more of like a semantic discussion than a discussion about
if you call them mirror neurons, then what do you call them when the same neurons light up when you want to move?
I don't think that's what is meant by the term mirror neurons.
I know what they mean.
That's what I'm saying. I think we're getting hung up on the phraseology here, and I just don't think.
Should.
So,
you bitch at Danny for getting hung up on phraseology, but now you do want to get hung up on phraseology.
I do.
So this is just because the network of neurons, they get involved with different. You have something, Nestle?
I was just want to ask whether Danny would still want to have a discussion between us. I don't know.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up pretty soon here, guys. So.
Yeah.
I mean, we can. My point was just going to be that the way that these neurons work together is that they form networks, and so it's all a statistical thing. And so when the neurologists talk about X type of neurons, right? They don't mean this neuron always does this and only does this. They just mean that this neuron has been seen to be involved in this process. And more importantly, when you say mirror neurons, what you mean is a category. It is the category of neurons that are involved in mirroring responses. That's it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it's not always involved in mirroring responses. Maybe it's involved in other things too. In fact,
it definitely
you should
is
assume it is, right? It should definitely be involved in other things, but it's also involved in mirroring responses, at least sometimes stochastically, right? At a higher percentage than some other neurons. And so it's a mirror neuron. That's all they mean.
Forgive me.
Yeah, it makes it. Yeah, it it does. It does make sense. Since humans, since humans are primates, so it would stand to reason that we also have mirror neurons. But as
Whoops. Sorry.
wow,
Sorry.
Really?
Sorry. Well, I just noticed him I noticed him in the chat.
Oh,
And-
I thought you were.
Oh wait, Otangelo's here. Oh,
Yeah, I've got an automatic thing set up on StreamYard that every time Otangelo shows up, it plays Benny Hill.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't control it. I can't stop it. I don't.
Right.
I was
It was
drunk when I
just-
programmed it. I can't.
Right.
fix it.
Yeah, it was just annoying.
Oh,
Sorry.
please don't take that out. That's fantastic.
Yeah, right. But it was like I'm trying to speak, and then all of a sudden I hear that. I was like, "The fuck did I do?"
Well, it's hard to get a word in edgewise, but anyway, the pushback is that people see mirror neurons discovered in popular science, and they think, oh, there's some kind of special neuron, and it's just we got to be careful how we talk about this shit, just like we do in genetics.
You're
Otherwise,
the
people
one-
get really.
I mean,
fucking crazy.
I agree. Like the term quantum fluctuation, that there isn't actually like anything doing some sort of fluctuate. That isn't really the best. But the thing is, physicists aren't getting hung up about the phraseology because physicists know what is meant by the term quantum fluctuation. So I get that, like, the laity might not understand what is meant by that, might think that it's something different, but I don't think that means that we shouldn't call it by the term that it is used.
Exactly.
Well,
I
mean,
that was just
what people's misconceptions
Well, yeah,
are.
the problem was that when those articles first came out, there was just a whole slew of fucking shit that came on the end of it, and it's like, okay, guys, stop.
Okay, blame.
See, this is why.
Same with my example.
By the way, this is why biologists, we like our Greek and Latin words, because it keeps the plebs out, right? Like, you physicists are the worst for this. Like, you start talking about flavors of quarks, like you've got it down there and licked them. I mean,
I don't look. The whole flavors thing is a bit odd. I will admit. I love physics as much as Leo, but what the fuck are why the fuck are there flavors? But no, like what I wanted to say is that the issue becomes like scientists have their own way of describing things, and then you have the journalists who either misunderstand what the fuck they read and try to write a sensational piece of it, does creating confusion for people who don't know anything about it, or like, you know what I mean? I think the issue comes down to communication. You know what I mean? Like, because the scientist tries to communicate as well as they can, but the journalists, they depending on, whether they're good or not. Like I read some interesting articles from the journalists that, that actually know what the fuck they're talking about, whereas others didn't. I guess basically you get the point, right? It's just it's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between medications.
Journalists are going to be the first ones up against the wall after the revolution, I assure you.
Generalists? What are generalists?
No, he said journalists. He meant journalists.
Oh, journalists. Okay. By the way, I did want to say there's a reason why the word flavor is used when describing certain properties of quarks.
Well, do tell, please.
That's because flavor is a way of differentiating between different objects. I mean, not that we go out and lick everything, but obviously it's a contrived example. But theoretically speaking, we could go out and get the flavor of everything, and we could use that to some degree to differentiate between these objects. But we're only differentiating between them utilizing one particular property, the flavor of something.
But
so there's particles that differ in a particular property We can only figure that out through that property. So it's like a flavor of sorts.
Yeah,
so they call it flavor.
Yeah, but do you see how that confuses people?
Well, no, I don't see how it's confusing.
Well,
because,
flavor. Usually,
I mean, if you actually think that particles have a flavor, you probably shouldn't be doing physics to begin with.
Well, look, Leo. The point is that when people hear flavor, if particles have flavors, they think in terms of food. Right.
Well, if they are thinking in those terms, then they're either really, really bad at like making inferences, or they're got a.
I can give a real life example. I can give a real life example. Like G-Man asked, if animals is a kingdom, who is the king?
But no. Okay, look. The point I'm trying to make is that, that a normal person is going to use what they know, right, as reference. When you say flavor, people will think, oh, it's something like food. You know what I mean?
If you think that in the context of particle physics, then you really just don't know how to make inferences. That would be with what Nestlake said. We talk about the animal kingdom, and if somebody came up to me and said, "Yeah, but who's the king?"
Well, okay,
that would just be they have no idea to make inferences on how that word, the connotation of that word in that context.
The example Nestlake used was really bad because it's G-Man.
I don't think that at all. I think it was a really good example of when we use the word kingdom, we don't mean that there's a king who rules over stuff.
I know. I'm just telling you how most people would understand the term flavor. Like,
yeah, but not in the context of particle physics. Just like we know what the word kingdom means, but if somebody mentioned the word kingdom with the word animal or the word plant in front of it, that changes the connotation. We know what the word flavor means, but if somebody said the flavor of an electron, if you say, well, electrons have a taste, I'm sorry, you're just dumb. You do not know how to make an inference. Even somebody who does I've talked to people who know absolutely nothing about even classical physics that have said, what does it mean, that have asked me, what did they mean when they say a flavor of a particle? I mean, I know they're not talking about taste. Obviously, people know that's not what the word means. So if you say, oh, flavor of an electron, I wonder if they're salty. You're just dumb. I don't know how else to say it. You're just like if you hear animal kingdom and you think, I wonder which animal is the king. You're probably just kind of dumb.
Okay,
I'm shattered. I really thought they tasted like lime bars, like Edie's lime bars.
Like
Parks.
Okay,
they taste like a 9-volt battery. At least electrons do.
Yeah, I tasted that. That taste sucks.
Protons
anyway,
taste like lemons.
We're gonna wrap her up.
And I understand that antimatter tastes like explosion.
Yes, it does.
I want to know what a hydrogen bomb tastes like.
It tastes like annihilation.
Oh, yes. What's annihilation taste like? Here, try this antimatter.
How did you hand it to him?
An antimatter glove with it. You'd have to have an infinite amount of antimatter gloves
how did you have
around your
an antimatter glove?
Yeah,
how are you wearing
need
the
an infinite
antimatter glove?
I don't know. An antimatter hand?
Okay, now we're just being silly. My point is that some people can misunderstand words.
Yes, I agree. But I think that when you hear a word in a particular context, even if you don't know what that word means, you'll know that the context that one would normally think of is obviously not the context. Like with animal kingdom, you might know nothing about biology, but when you hear animal kingdom, you're probably going to be like, all right, they're probably not meaning that like an animal is ruling over all the others. Just like you might not know anything about physics and say they just said the flavor of a particle. Okay, I don't know what that means, but it definitely can't mean that they're tasting them. Like there's an inference where you might not know what the word means, but you know what it doesn't mean. If you know what I mean.
You guys have shattered so many things for me just now. Okay, guys, we're gonna end this. So we're quitting right now. We're gonna quit. We're gonna put the logo up.
By the way, gonna go for it. Mentioned you in the chat there, really quick. Speed, just to let you know.
Oh, he did. Okay, I'll check. I will check before I leave the chat. Okay.